What that means is the developers have come to you, the market has come to you, developers are coming in, building your street, your subdivision, all the new subdivisions, new commercial, putting in all of the new roads, water, sewer, at no cost to the city, right? We're bringing jobs, we're bringing people. You guys should thank us. And so when you drive around, this is the best place to live, work, play phase that I was talking about earlier. You drive around these places and most of the city is shiny and new, and all the neighborhoods are new, the schools, everything's kind of new, except they have maybe that old downtown it's a little older, but it's historic. It's like the touristy part, right? But what happens with that infrastructure as soon as a developer puts it in the ground?
It's yours.
It's the cities to take care of for forever, right? And when I say the cities, that's the taxpayers, right? This is the thing that we have not accounted for until probably the last decade. More cities are starting to talk about it. We just look at the front end of development. A developer will come in and say, we want to do this project. It's going to generate this many jobs. It's going to bring this many people in. Look what it's going to do to your tax base. And oh, by the way, hey, can you throw us an incentive to like make the roads and stuff a little bit cheaper, or maybe give us a tax rebate or something? But they don't do the other half of the math, which is what is it going to cost 40 years later when that street has to be rebuilt? Anybody know what a street costs, roughly?
$1 million a mile.
You got a winner here. $1 million for an 11-foot lane mile. So if you have a 33-foot wide street, that's pretty standard for newer subdivisions today. 33-foot wide street, 1 mile is going to cost you between $3 and $6 million to rebuild it. I don't know how many miles of street you have in Hillsboro yet. We're going to do the math and find out. But most cities have not been accounting for the future reconstruction of this infrastructure. Same thing for water, sewer, drainage, parks, city facilities, schools. And so as you push to the right of this, your city starts to run out of area to develop. The population growth starts to flatten out a little bit. And so the revenue from new growth, impact fees, tax-based growth, and what have you, starts to slow down. And all of that infrastructure that was built 20 or 30 or 40 years ago has to be rebuilt. That's Detroit, that's Ferguson, that's Jackson, all of Flint, all the places you've seen on the news of having different issues. The pension and some of those other things were part of it, but the real root of the issue was the development pattern, and they weren't accounting for these future liabilities. If you look at how we account for stuff, cities account for roads as assets. If a road goes in, it's an asset, but it's actually a liability. You have to think 30 years later, we got to rebuild it. How are we saving that money, right? That's a big part of what we do, is just help cities see right now, just to fix what you have in the ground, what's it going to cost? So you're not going to see from us the big difference for us, and we said this kind of in our conversations with Megan's team when we were interviewing for this project. I've been part of a lot of comp plans where we stand up at the start, or others will stand up at the start and say, what do you want for Hillsboro? What do you want Hillsboro to be, right? If I came to you and said, what kind of car are you going to buy?
A van.
Okay. All right, you're a realist though. But if I said, some people say, oh, I want an $80,000 F-150, whatever. But if I say, okay, you're married, you have 2 kids, you make $50,000 a year, and you live 30 minutes from work. Now what kind of car are you going to buy? It's a very different conversation, right? So what we're starting with you all is Hillsboro already, no fault of anybody here, but the development is what it is. This is what you got. This is what you have to take care of. So the first starting point is, what is it going to take care of everything that you have first? And then how can we grow in a way that's going to close that gap? Because we don't want you to get to the end of this curve and be upside down. We want you to use the growth for closing the gap, not to make it bigger.
So you're going to be telling us how upside down we already are.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Megan kind of has an idea. I think we're just going to be probably adding some zeros.
She's different.
What did that say? Oh, yeah. So most cities haven't been saving budgeting for these liabilities. So if you have a resource gap, 3 ways you can close it. This is oversimplifying. First way is we can raise more money by increasing taxes. Raise your hand if you're a fan of increasing taxes. I didn't think so. Side question. Raise your hand if you would support a street fee that went directly to maintaining and rebuilding streets. Okay, just a little movement, and that's my point. There's a little movement here. People are usually, heck no. You say taxes is good. You say street fee if it goes towards a specific thing, maybe, but give me some assurance that you're not going to move it to somewhere else, right? Second option, if you don't want to pay more, we got to reduce services. This is basically what we do now. Every year, every city goes through budgeting. They get their list from all the departments. What do you need? This much. And then they look at how much do we have? This much. And so what happens? Well, we're going to fund certain things and everything else is going to get punted to the next year. And then they do it again. And they punt, and they punt, and they punt. And actually, the amount that they're punting each year is getting bigger, not smaller, right? And at some point, it's not one street or one water line, it's a whole neighborhood or a whole part of the city. And then people who have the wealth to do so will move. They'll move somewhere else in Texas. We see this from other parts of the country, moving here, and then we see this inside Texas of people moving from a first-room place to a second-room place to a third-room place, and then, oh, look at Hillsboro. Maybe we could go there, right? If you reduce services long enough, you end up with your community starts to decline, right? And the people who could pay more leave, and you're left with the people who just can't afford anymore, and you just kind of. Yes. Sorry, I talk with my hands a lot, and I don't really like it. But, so the third option, if you don't want to raise taxes, if you don't want to reduce services, the third option is what we call develop responsibly or develop productively. How can we align your development and service model with what you all are willing and able to pay for now and in the future, right? How can we maximize quality of life for what you're willing and able to pay for? Some people are able to pay a lot more, but they're not willing to, right? Some people say they're willing to, but when you do the math, they actually aren't able to. This third one is what this comprehensive plan is all about. How can we develop more productively in Hillsboro? How can we align the development and the service model and all of the different financial tools that the city has to improve your quality of life, preserve and improve your quality of life, preserve and protect and hopefully grow the value of your property and your homes or your business, but do it in an incremental way that kind of, what I like to say, cultivates fiscal health for the city. So we're making the city financially stronger, but it also grows local wealth for those of you living here. So you're raising the ability of folks here to pay a little bit more over time. As opposed to, oh, there's this nice part of town, we're gonna do an incentive, we're gonna bring somebody out of town to build this massive, huge, fancy urban village thing, and you gentrify the place. You push out the folks that live there because they can't afford to be there, and you bring a whole different kind of group in. That's not what we wanna do. We wanna do incremental growth that kind of stabilizes and incrementally enhances the value of what you guys have already. So getting that alignment is not easy. Getting that alignment takes trade-offs, right? You cannot have, raise your hand if you want stable services. You want reliable police and fire and good infrastructure. Raise your hand if you like lower density. Oh, a few, okay. Raise your hand if you like low taxes. You cannot have all three of those. Sorry, you can't. You can have low density and low taxes, but it might take the fire department longer to get to you. Or you might have a gravel road instead of a paved road. You can have low density and stable services, but you're gonna have higher taxes. You can have low taxes and stable services, but you have to have higher density. The evil D word, right? But in a lot of places, and I don't know this, I've never done it, but I would argue in a lot of places, if you just added one story to your development, add one story to your development in downtown, maybe a little bit of additional density in some of your residential neighborhoods, but just start with one additional story in all of your downtown stuff. You'd get close to penciling out, I bet. But we built one story, big stuff, big parking lots that uses a lot of land, takes a lot of infrastructure, and one story stuff just does not generate a lot of taxable value back. So, we have talked a lot already with Megan and staff about a common language, the North Star. The North Star for this plan is closing Hillsboro's resource gap. In protecting, preserving, enhancing quality of life, keeping things affordable and attainable for residents, but also that thing that Megan started us off with, that the city has to have more resources to take care of these problems. They are aware of it, they're focusing on it, they're trying every tool that they can, and what we're bringing to the table with this process is the development pattern. As you have growth, or if you have interest for redevelopment, where does it go in a way that can generate more revenue and hopefully reduce the service costs over time? So fiscal sustainability is a common language. You might hear us talk about density. You might hear us talk about road diets. You might hear us talk about zoning. A lot of technical buzzwords, right, that a lot of people don't understand. But if we just boil it down and say we're trying to preserve and enhance your values, we're trying to maximize the return on your taxpayer dollars, we're trying to ensure that the city is being good stewards of those financial resources, and we can connect mobility strategies, housing strategies, economic development strategies back to this goal. We're trying to bump revenues, reduce costs, and make things more affordable for everybody, right? We're going to try to connect things back to that through this whole process for you guys, so that when you're looking at different decisions about where development might go, what kind of housing do we need, how are people going to get around, you're thinking in your head, the reason these guys are talking about this is for this bigger reason, this bigger goal. So land use fiscal analysis is part of what we're going to do is this process. Basically what it is looking at every parcel in the city and saying how much is it generating in property tax revenue. So how much is the city actually getting from that property owner in property tax dollars? What does it cost to serve? Both with current budget and then unfunded stuff. So if we say the city needs X dollars for streets, if we add that in. And so for every property in the city, every parcel in the city, we're going to be able to show what some people call a red-green map, profit loss map, but it's a way for us to see every property in the city, which one's generating more than it costs to serve, and which ones cost more to serve than it generates in revenue. Again, not a good or bad thing for any one property, but what we're trying to do is balance that out over the whole city so that things pencil out. And usually, you're going to see some interesting takeaways. The places that a lot of people think are maybe the ones being subsidized are often the ones that are doing better and subsidizing more of the spread out stuff. You're going to see maps like this. This is Dallas County. The green and the higher the bar is the higher value per acre. The higher. So we take the revenue generated, we divide it by the acreage of the property, and you get a revenue per acre number. Anybody know where downtown Dallas is on this, right? What's interesting though is if you look in Dallas County at the first ring and the second ring and the third ring cities, you see some suburbs in there. But when you go into that suburb, they say, and they think that they're relatively wealthy, but they're little tiny things on this map when you compare it to the bigger density of Dallas. And the reality is that Dallas Center funds a lot of that other stuff around it. So these are two maps from Brownsville, down on the border. It's a community we worked with back in 2017. I like to show these two because they're the most dramatic. Just being transparent here. But one of the things we do is we show this revenue map, or this one's an ROI map, but we also do like just net revenue. So, but we do it for current budget. So this is their current budget that shows if you just take the revenue coming in and the costs, anything that's green is generating more than it costs, anything that's red or yellow is break even or costing nothing. This is current budget. When we did this in 2017, just to rebuild all of the streets that they had in Brownsville, not water, sewer, drainage, anything else, just streets, $1.2 billion. If you average that out, $65 million a year. They were spending $3 million. It was a big eye-opener for Trump. Like, oh, right? They were doing $3 million a year for like preventative maintenance, fix a pothole, maybe overlay a street. They weren't thinking about, oh, we got to rebuild this stuff. So when we take just the street costs, this is the budget. When we add in streets, that's what it looks like. So this is what they have. That's what they really need. So we're going to do the same thing for you all. You're gonna get to see how different parts of the city look.
We're gonna change color.
We can change colors, yeah. You want to tell me some green? No, we've done purple, yellow, we've done some different versions, because sometimes we do get colorblind folks that like, I can't read this at all. But we did start initially with the idea of like, green is making money, red is bad. But we've gotten a lot of feedback on that over the years. But what you can do here is you can start to look at this and study which places are still productive even when you have more cost in it, and why. And maybe we should think about building a little bit more of that. So a couple of concepts. How do you increase revenue? Development patterns. First thing, put more, this is lot coverage. So put more building on the lot. If you have a lot, the more building you put on it, meaning don't take as much up with parking, don't take up as much with like green space or a yard, but just on a simple level, the more building you put on a lot, the more value per acre you're gonna have, right? So this just shows the same size building on 3 different lot sizes and shows kind of some math below it. The smallest one there, the one that has the most building coverage, has the highest revenue per acre. The second concept is just going vertical. This is easier for people to understand. If you have a street, neighborhood street, everything's exactly the same, street, water, sewer, all of that. The lot size is exactly the same. And you have a 1-story house or a 2-story house, the 2-story house is worth a little bit more, right? So the city gets a little more tax revenue per acre out of that. If you go to 3 stories or anything else, it gets multiplied even more. But just the power of 2 or 3 stories is very, very, very impactful on tax and value for the city. Value of different development patterns. We'll do stuff like this. We'll look at rural estate, we'll look at suburban neighborhoods, we'll look at downtown neighborhoods, townhomes, all kinds of different stuff. We want to give you data points for what different kinds of housing look like in terms of just the value for someone purchasing that home, but also the value per acre and the tax revenue per acre back to the city. We also look at commercial. We look at little small lots. We look at downtowns. We look at big boxes. And in most cases, an area of downtown like this is going to generate just as much in value to the city as a big box would. The difference is this kind of downtown pattern is one business goes in or out, a new one can go in. With the big boxes, when a big box leaves, it's a lot harder to retrofit that stuff. This is probably one of the most powerful slides that comes out of our land use fiscal analysis stuff. Smaller is a big, like a win-win. The smaller lots, every city that we've ever done this for, and I'll explain this for you real quick. Across the bottom is the size of lots. So this is just single family. You've got the smallest lots on the left and you have the largest lots on the right. The blue bars are the average value of homes on that lot size. Make sense? The blue line going down from left to right is the revenue per acre. So every city that we've ever done this for, the smallest lots are the most affordable for residents, and they generate the highest revenue per acre to the city. What's been interesting, and to build on that, the one in the middle, 30-acre lots, half-acre lots, 3,000 square foot home, whatever. This is 150 now, they're going up. But that middle one, that's an absolute money pit for most cities. And that's what every home builder in Texas wants to build. They want to build all the infrastructure, wider streets, cul-de-sacs, I call them the loops and lollipops. They want to build all that stuff, bigger lots, bigger homes. And it's just the math does not work for the city. It doesn't mean you can't have some of that or shouldn't have some of that for the people that want that. But as a community, you need to build more of a spectrum, and small is really, really powerful. I'll say this here, and I usually say this multiple times through the process. Small does not have to mean poor quality, right? You can have duplexes, you can have cottage courts, you can have townhomes, you can have live-work units. There's a lot of different ways that we used to build housing that's different than not everybody wants, and not everybody can afford a 3,000 square foot home on a half-acre lot. And demographics-wise, COVID-wise, a lot of things are changing that. You got older folks that want to downsize into more walkable communities. You got younger folks coming up to school, but like I said earlier, they don't want that suburban living at all. They can't afford it. They can't afford a car. They can't afford a lot of things that we thought that we were able to afford. So they're like, they want small. They just want somewhere that they can own and build their wealth So we gotta think differently about housing options, and you're gonna hear that a lot from us. How can we add different types of housing that are still high quality, the neighborhood's high quality, but different sizes to change those price points and increase that value per acre. This is just an example of graphic that shows when you put, if you have 2 blocks, just the difference of if you put more density, if you put more types of housing on that block, the cost for that street, water and sewer gets spread out over more homes, right? When you build lower density, the one on the bottom, those 2 houses have to pay for all of that stuff. That's not how we do our accounting in cities. We spread the cost equally across everybody, right? So, but when you get to the revenue side, that one on the top is going to generate a lot more taxable value and revenue to the city than the one on the bottom. So how do we put all this together in a plan? Just real quickly, the fiscally informed plan. Everything that we do is about that fiscal, closing that gap. So doing a baseline analysis, projecting the current trends. If you continue the way that you are, what is it going to look like? What do you have to maintain? What is your development pattern producing in revenue? And is that going to close that gap or make it bigger? It's probably going to make it bigger, right? So then the third part is how do we develop a fiscally informed land use plan? How do we develop a future land use plan, a growth sector map that guides growth in certain areas, that does, can diversify those housing types, that can maybe add a few more walkable communities that older and younger folks want, still keep a lot of the auto-centric stuff that you have, but do that in a way that's going to close that gap. And then once we come up with whatever we call the preferred scenario, the finalized future land use map, we'll put numbers to that again and come back and show maybe this doesn't get you all the way there, but it at least starts to move you down the path. I think I have a couple more slides. Complete neighborhoods, you're going to hear us talk about this. There's a lot of housing between single family, detached, and mega apartment buildings. If you go to the northeast, you'll see a lot of these different kind of, row houses, townhomes, cottage courts, all kinds of different stuff that's great quality. And it's actually really cool and interesting, and a lot of people like it. It can also be very, very expensive once the value of that neighborhood goes up. The point is there's just a whole spectrum of stuff that we can build for housing. We just have to get more builders that want to build this stuff. Prioritizing infill development. This is an image from South Bend, kind of known nationally now for their, South Bend in Indiana, for their infill and neighborhood redevelopment, neighborhood evolution program. A lot of this infill stuff, big developers are not going to build it. The opportunity for Hillsboro, and this is part of cultivating your own local economy, is the best way to build this stuff is with and by and for the locals. One building at a time, one lot at a time, with the people that live there, for the people that live there, and invested and supported by the community. Your local banks, your local community investors, whoever it might be. This stuff happens one building at a time, and it's back to building towns the way that we used to, right? Last thing I'll say is maximizing infrastructure investments. Anything that you spend on infrastructure, if it's fixing something, if it's building something new, doing it in a way that's going to maximize that return. So when you do infrastructure, are you doing that just to put back the same kind of neighborhood context that's there, or are you maybe going to rebuild a street that maybe has a wider sidewalk, or maybe in some places you have a bike lane, or maybe in some places you get rid of the wider sidewalk, or you get rid of on-street parking to add another lane. You have to be very intentional with your infrastructure design to get the development and the neighborhood context that you want on the back end. I really think this is the last one. I mentioned the strip centers. There's a lot of these, right? There are a lot of things that you can do with these to bring them back. This is one in Duncanville, Texas, south of Dallas. This is actually where our office is right now. We work with a guy by the name of Monty Anderson. He's a small developer, done a lot of stuff in Oak Cliff, Duncanville, kind of his home, southern Dallas. He calls it his farm. But because of the work that he's done to retrofit a lot of these places and build small development, now he's part of a group called Neighborhood Evolution that does coaching and training all over the country on how to do this. He's going to come down here and work with us to do a couple of sessions. One, to just talk concepts, and then the second time he comes back is going to be to work with whoever we can find here in Hillsboro that wants to be part of this model and kind of get the coaching started on how to do this. But this is one big box strip center, vacant, declining in property value, has some not so good activity happening on it. Comes in, cleans up the facades, the front, the street frontage now has some nice landscaping and signage on it. And then the part that we're working on with them right now is putting 3-story townhomes right in the middle of that parking lot. Incrementally enhancing public spaces. This is from Louisiana, but there's opportunities everywhere to do this. Just work with local artists, find a nasty concrete wall, find an underpass. In this specific community, one of the things, it's an older community, one of the things they wanted is pickleball courts. They couldn't afford to go build more pickleball courts, but they had all of these underpasses that were ugly, that were shaded, and they said, what if we go paint some pickleball courts there? They did, and they're used like all the time. Small investments have the biggest impacts. We're gonna think about a lot of little places with just a little bit of twinkly lights, a little bit of investment, and we can turn them into great places. So that's what this is all about, cultivating fiscal health, building that self-sustaining local economy, the trust and collaboration. Your city, your leadership gets it. They need you to understand that they're working towards this goal for you. And this process is as much about educating you and kind of bringing the community into this process as opposed to just the city doing a plan and trying to get it on our own. So I think Catherine's gonna finish for us. This is what some folks have said about this process. Long story short, people don't realize that you have the resource gap, but when you start to talk about it, they're like, that makes sense. Okay, so before Catherine comes back up here, any questions? Yeah.
Well, I don't know if this is a question so much, but do y'all have ways of encouraging current building owners? Like, we have a lot of buildings downtown where the upstairs have been empty forever, or for a long time. To encourage those building owners to find a way to finish those out and use them as retail space, office space, residential space. I mean, there's just so many places in downtown that it would just make that area so much more vibrant.
Yeah. There's conversations that we'll have about that. The first question we'll probably ask, and we don't have time to get into it tonight, but are they in-town owners or out-of-town owners?
That's a good question.
That's where you gotta start.
Yeah.
But as part of this, like the community conversation is, hey, we have vacant lots, we have vacant second stories, let's focus some development back in. And sometimes, I don't know the answer here yet, but sometimes it's the codes, your zoning codes, your building codes, development codes, won't let that kind of stuff happen. So that's part of what we were already talking about today is we wanna make sure as we go through this process, your regulatory environment will let this infill stuff happen. Because right now, in a lot of cities, the bigger stuff and the growth on the edge is very easy to do and it fits with the codes and design standards. But this infill stuff, smaller stuff, is very hard to
There
do.
were a lot of us live there too.
Yeah, great. In the back?
Yeah, we're talking about doing this infill development, taking up these empty lots and building back on them. In some of these areas downtown, some of these home areas, we have older homes, older style homes, and doing this infill type development is a discussion that we had about trying to keep that historic look downtown Hillsboro, because that's one of the charms about Hillsboro is the historic buildings and people moving here. I mean, and also what you talk about having a front porch versus a front facade in the backyard and having that community feel.
Yeah, I think, driving around here, you see a lot of that old historical architecture, and it's like, why can't we build that anymore? And it does get back to building codes and building materials and some of that, but if there's a will, there's a way. If there's a tent, if you want to bring some of that stuff back, some of it's historic preservation, some of it's just, again, codes to be able to allow builders and encourage builders to build some of that. Again, and it's kind of what I said with the local builders too, like the track builders, the mass builders, the big builders, they want to go crank out stuff that's one size fits all. So doing stuff that preserves that character and doing it at scale and the architectural detail that not just preserves what you have, but actually makes it better. Adds more businesses, adds another coffee shop, or adds, I don't know, anything else, any kind of missing stuff that would add value to that neighborhood. Again, where there's a will, there's a way, but it does have to do a lot with updating codes and building codes and finding the right group of architects and designers that know how to design that old way and bringing that back. I'm just gonna guess that when we do the land use fiscal analysis and we look at your patterns, some of those historic homes and properties downtown are gonna be the highest value ones for exactly that reason. One more question real quick.
Yes,
and I'm
sir.
happy after this presentation, we'll stick out, we can talk as long as you want.
Nobody likes taxes, but there's an alternative to taxes if we need to raise money for specific priorities. And I do mean priorities, things that are more important than other things, like can't say what that is. Bond referendums, where voters vote to raise the money. They approve or disapprove the level of cash needed.
Yeah, we had a conversation with the finance director earlier today about where you guys were with, and I don't want to get real technical on the tax rate, but there's a portion of your property tax rate that goes to maintenance and operations, basically taking care of stuff, and there's a portion of your tax rate that goes to debt service. That's the interest and sinking fund part. You guys, I think 2022 was the last bond program I think he talked about. Bonds, COs, that is part of the solution, but you got to be really careful about using that, because sometimes we can show some cities that debt service portion of the tax rate goes up and up and up. When you do a bond, what you have to guarantee is you're going to set the very first part of your property tax has to go towards paying that bill, and then whatever's left goes to maintenance and operations. And fragile cities, fiscally irresponsible cities, they do debt, and then their property tax, the portion of that property tax that they have left for M&O shrinks, because it's all going to debt. And that's a very similar story to a lot of people personally, right? They go, oh, I can get a loan for a car, I can get a loan for a house, I can get another loan, blah, blah, blah. And then they look up and 70% of their income's going to debt payments. So you gotta be careful. It is one tool in the toolbox, using it responsibly. It is one of the things you're gonna have to use to catch up on infrastructure, for sure. Thank you.
So as I had mentioned earlier, we are in phase 1. During phase 1 and phase 2, we will be getting a lot of community input because you all live here, you live and breathe Hillsboro, so we need you to give us everything that you have regarding the different elements that we will be asking you about. So some ongoing and upcoming engagement. There is a project website, Hillsboro35.com. It will be up the remainder of the project. So when is this going to end? February 2026? No.
Is that the length of y'all's relationship with the city?
I'm sorry?
The length of relationship with the city is through what, the 26?
The contract, yes, the entire project is February 2027. Here you'll be able to find dates, locations of future events. We will host surveys, we'll host virtual engagement material, or engagement activities, or rooms as we call them. And then there'll be blog posts of what is a comprehensive plan, recaps on the different trips, and other resources. So that is already up. You all may have seen the first station is the Vibrant Community Assessment. That is the first survey of this process. This gives us a baseline on what the community's perception is of Hillsboro on different elements, such as your downtown, your school district, the ability to retain younger populations, local businesses, and so on. So if you all, again, it's only like a 10-minute survey, 16 questions. If you all can take it, and then also let your friends, families, neighbors, co-workers know to fill it out. The more responses that we get, the better representation and baseline we have understanding of what's going on in Hillsboro. It will be available until Wednesday, May 14th, end of day. Some other engagements that we have, this kind of gives you a bit of a timeline. So we will be peppering you all with a couple more surveys, but again, because we are in the assess and then the explore phase, so we are trying to gain as much feedback as possible. Trust me, we are also asking this of your city staff as well, so it is a community effort. This allows us to truly understand and make significant recommendations and actions that you all will be able to implement and feel comfortable implementing once this plan is done and ready for implementation. Kevin talked about a land use fiscal analysis. That presentation is tentatively scheduled for June. That will also be a community presentation like this one. It will be promoted, ideally, I'm assuming broadcasted, and for you all to come see the findings, ask questions, so on and so forth. And then our next upcoming trips will be in August, October, and February. We are in the process of scheduling those, and once we have those dates solidified, they will also go on the website. to stick around until 8 o'clock. If you have any questions, concerns, I know a majority of you have already started partaking in the stations that we have. But please, if you have not signed in, please sign in. That allows us to understand who was here. The first station, as I said, it gives you the link to the Vibrant Community Assessment Survey, which then leads you on to the project website if you want more information. The second station is about prioritization. You'll get some fake money that you'll then put in little ballot boxes on how you want the city to use those funds, and then at the end of the night, we'll count it up and see, the different types of rankings. And then the last station is the assets. Tell us what things you believe in Hillsboro are an asset. Is it your parks? Is it your downtown? It's over identity, physical, public, economic, and community assets, local organizations, so on and so forth. But that is all we have. Any questions? If there isn't large group questions, again, feel free to come up to any of us, and we would love to chat with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.